Well, class, under the circumstances, you're not going to be able to present your final PowerPoint presentation to the class, but I want to talk to you about how to use PowerPoint because someday in the future you will surely be presenting in front of a group, and these are principles you can use. Okay, first, one important thing to keep in mind, and sometimes we forget, is considering your audience. You're going to make a very different PowerPoint presentation if you are teaching a bunch of kindergartners versus if you're teaching a bunch of grandparents. Here's a question for you. When would you not use the flying paper bird transition? Business presentation to investors or a presentation of pictures at a party? And if you answered a business presentation to investors, you got the right idea. That's a more serious professional setting. You wouldn't want a goofy origami transition. But presentation of pictures at a party might be a good place to have something more lighthearted and silly. Also consider not just who you're presenting to, but what you're presenting. If you're presenting something serious, it'll be a very different story than if you're presenting something casual or comical. Here's a question. When would you not use the crumpled up paper transition? A getting to know Mr. Cox presentation for students or a presentation on the Holocaust? And I think you got the right idea. If you said getting to know Mr. Cox presentation for students would be a fine time to use a crumpled up paper transition, but a presentation on the Holocaust would not be a good time to use the crumpled paper transition. It sends a message, right? We're not taking the content seriously if the transition is crumpling it up in a ball and dropping it. So you're probably going to want to have something, again, more serious, more straight-laced if you're doing a heavy topic like the Holocaust. But a getting to know Mr. Cox presentation for students, maybe he wants to keep it relaxed and fun-loving. Here's an interesting thought, and one of the most misused aspects of PowerPoint. People will get up to present and they'll spend their time reading the PowerPoint. Not a good idea. Imagine if I got up to the class and I read you this. No long stretches of text. The audience isn't honestly going to be able to read carefully while simultaneously listening to you talk about it. And goodness knows I'll just put one big old long paragraph there and read the whole thing. Blah, 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 blah. I could keep going, but you get the idea. This is super boring, super lame. What if instead I cut out as much of the text as possible? Rather than spewing all of my thoughts out there, look at all this stuff in red. Those are the same concept. Long, big old long, a bunch of text. Look at all the stuff in blue. Also, that's the same concept. I only need to say each of these things once. The stuff in green, reading. Just say it once. I could cut it down to all of this stuff and just have my main point. I've underlined all of the unique ideas in here. And so if I just condense it to a shorter concept, I can make it pop a lot more. So instead of a big long paragraph, I've got now just 3 basic bullet points. They get across the same ideas but without near as much wordage for the audience to plow through. Much better. But this is only halfway there. Right now I'm using PowerPoint better, but I'm not using its visual potential to as much as I could. What if I instead took each of these points that I'd boiled it down to and gave each its own slide and gave each its own visual display or interaction? I could make my ideas really a lot more interesting. For example, here's don't read, present. No long sentences, break it up. And ignoring visual potential is boring. Now, do you see how that set of 3 slides was a whole lot more interesting than that first big long paragraph that I presented you with, and a lot more memorable? Use PowerPoint to its full potential. Oh, look at this guy. Let's say I have this slide about ninjas. Notice once again, I've got a whole bunch of content on here. And again, students do this all the time. They just put a whole bunch of stuff on to one slide. Why don't I cut it down? Let's find all of the stuff that's repeated. And now let's underline only the key ideas. Just keep those and wipe away everything else. Maybe I got something like this. A nice bullet point. One bullet point at a time coming in allows the audience to digest each idea on its own rather than trying to go through the whole thing at once. Or maybe I could even, again, even better, give each bullet point its own slide and its own visual. So you can have a lot of fun, and again, you can use the visual aspects of PowerPoint to make your presentation much more interesting and much more powerful. It's money in the bank. Money in the bank. All right, this is just a review of, well, actually, I forgot that I modified this and shortened it for you since we're doing remote schooling, so you don't have to worry about all of this. Lucky you. Just a few examples of how PowerPoints can be improved. So let's say I've got talking about a career in geology, and I say it needs a bachelor's or master's in geology. Look at all this text here. Why don't I shorten it? Here we go. And again, bullet points in PowerPoint are better than complete sentences. I know your English teacher says always write in complete sentences. Most of the time that's true, but in this case, it's not. Oh, a nice visual. There we go. Geology. Make your ideas a little more interesting. Ooh, environmental science. Here's one, what detectives do. Work for local police forces, work for private clients in cases. Can I shorten that up? Yeah. Why don't I say something like this? Detectives work for local police forces, private clients in cases. Just eliminate extra text. This is a nice slide. I've never cracked my phone. I have a ninja star through my phone at a wall and it didn't break. But look, complete sentences, I've got much more text than I need. And while that's a nice picture, can I add some interaction and make this more interesting with some animation? How about this? Why don't I just say the text instead of putting it up on the screen? The audience doesn't really need to know that. Instead, I can just stand there and say, I have never cracked my phone. I even ninja star through my phone at the wall and it didn't break. So you don't really need text at all the time. If you do, keep it real short to basic words and phrases. But remember, you're the presenter. The PowerPoint is just backing you up. Now, how do we present well? Here's a few things to keep in mind. Practice this with your family. You can't present here in class, but you can make yourself a better presenter. Present with confidence. Okay, stage behavior. Make sure you use eye contact, that you're looking at your audience. You got to know your material to do that. Talk to the people in the back of the room. Project your voice. If you mumble, if you have your chin down, if you're talking into the ground, people won't hear you. And even if they do, they won't believe you as much because you're not confident. Keep your posture sharp, straight back. Keep your shoulders kind of broad and your feet planted. Move purposefully. You can walk around, that's fine, but don't like sway back and forth or step like rhythmically. And practice getting rid of like, and other verbal pauses. We all say them. Oh, you know what? That slide was not very well presented. What if I gave each bullet point its own entrance with some animations? There we go. That's more like it. Or what if I gave each one its own visual? It just makes it more memorable, and it makes your slideshow more interesting. People will actually want to watch it more than they would otherwise. So preparation, know your material. I call it at-a-glance confidence. That means you don't have to read. You don't have to stare at your slideshow or at your notes. You can just glance down at a note card and then back up at your audience. That's the way to present. And of course, rehearse, time yourself, even record yourself if you can so you can see any physical gestures or tics that you do. You can listen to your verbal pauses and practice getting rid of them. Again, the more you practice and prepare it, the better you'll sound, the more confident you'll be. And timing yourself, it's always good because a lot of times we don't realize how long we're taking or how short.